This safety orientation was developed and is provided as a safety resource and guide for employees and contractors. However, it is not intended to be the only or primary source of safety awareness and education. Management at each of Dillard-Smith Construction Company's regional operations is responsible for ensuring that all employees and contractors are adequately trained in site-specific safety rules, procedures, and work practices. If you have questions about the safety of any task you are asked to perform, stop and ask supervision for clarification.
Hello and welcome to Dillard-Smith Construction Company. Since 1947, Dillard-Smith has provided quality services to the electric utility industry and others vital to our business. Today, we're an operating unit and subsidiary of Quanta Services, one of the largest specialty contracting firms in the nation. We have a responsibility to ourselves and our families and our shareholders to work safely. In a moment, you'll watch a presentation of our Safety Code of Conduct. The Safety Code of Conduct will help you understand mandatory requirements that we expect you to accept and follow. These guidelines are central to our overall safety plan. As President, I want you to know that management and I are committed to your health and safety and to providing for and maintaining a safe work environment. Our mission is one that seeks continuous improvement, and at Dillard-Smith, safety is everyone's job. It's integral in our pursuit to be the very best in the industry. I'm proud of our reputation of creating value and for improving the lives of our employees and many others. I believe, as I want you to believe, that we can meet both the needs of our customers and the needs of our employees and their families without injury. It's really up to you. And you can help by coming to work prepared and alert and staying alert throughout the day, by looking out for your coworkers and others, by using your training, experience, and trade skills to participate fully in job briefings to help identify and eliminate hazards. If you feel unsafe or see an unsafe condition, it is your responsibility to intervene and ask for a timeout to discuss your concern. No harm can come to you for protecting yourself or others. I ask you to please pay close attention as our safety success requires your total commitment and your active participation. With your help, we can all return home safe and healthy to those we value the most. Thank you.
Your safety and the safety of your coworkers are of the highest importance at Dillard-Smith Construction Company. No project or work activity is so important or urgent that necessary safe work practices can be ignored or skipped. The safety of life and limb outweigh all other considerations. Every worker is responsible for reporting any injury, unsafe acts, or conditions to your supervisor immediately. It is Dillard-Smith Construction Company's expectation that all employees and contractors work in a safe, sanitary, and healthy work environment. Regional management will ensure that employees and contractors have the education, knowledge, skills, and equipment to perform their job safely. Each employee and contractor must understand and have working knowledge of this orientation and the content of the Safety Code of Conduct booklet. All rules and safe work practices in this orientation must be followed. Negligence, carelessness, or unsafe work practices will not be tolerated. Violations of company rules or policies can result in immediate disciplinary actions, up to and including discharge from the company or being released as a contractor. Each employee and contractor has ownership and responsibility for his or her own safety. This responsibility increases with knowledge and experience. Each employee and contractor is required to know and use all personal protective equipment for his or her job. the use, purchase, or distribution of intoxicants or drugs while on duty, while on company or customer property, or while using company or customer vehicle or equipment is prohibited. Employees and contractors may not report for duty while under the influence of intoxicants or drugs, or be relieved by another person who is known or suspected to be under the influence of intoxicants or drugs. If an employee's or contractor employee's physician has prescribed drugs or medication that may limit or impair the person's ability to perform work activities safely, the employee or contractor must advise their supervisor of any medical limitations. Employees and contractors will be trained in company and project emergency action procedures. Employees and contractors will be made aware of the proper emergency actions to use when managing a crisis. Your supervisor will review all emergency procedures with all new employees and contractors. Emergency notification numbers are posted at all project locations and in company vehicles. Be familiar with all emergency notification numbers. First aid kits must be available, maintained in good condition, and inspected frequently to ensure that expended items are replaced. Make sure you know where to locate the nearest first aid kit. Again, report all work-related incidents and accidents immediately to a supervisor and Corporate Medical and Claims Department. The phone number at the office is 423-490-2216, and the mobile number to call is 423-544-5374. Waiting to report an accident on the next shift or the next business day is unacceptable and may result in disciplinary action. Never allow a work-related incident or accident to go unreported, no matter how insignificant. Workplace incidents or accidents are investigated in order to provide information to management and workers regarding prevention of future occurrences. Employees or contractors involved in incidents or accidents may be required to submit to post-incident or accident drug and alcohol testing. Failure to do so will be considered a positive result. Firearms or other dangerous weapons are prohibited in the workplace, on company or customer property, or in company vehicles. There are no exceptions. Harassment, threats, or acts of violence on company property and/or during hours of work will not be tolerated. Personnel must report such acts immediately to company supervision. Intimidation, horseplay, practical jokes, or similar activities are not permitted. Direct confrontations between employees or contractors and members of the general public are prohibited. If a dispute arises, the person must notify their supervisor immediately. The company will conduct safety meetings with all employees and contractors on a regular basis. The purpose of these meetings is to communicate and discuss site-specific safety requirements, procedures, and provide safety-related training. Participation in and attendance by employees and contractors in these safety meetings is mandatory. Supervisors will conduct daily job briefings and weekly safety meetings with employees and contractors as needed. All employees and contractors shall sign a meeting roster to document their attendance. The attendance roster or related documents will, at a minimum, list the topic discussed, the meeting date, and the printed and signed name of each attendee. Authorized employees of Dillard-Smith Construction Company Safety Department will conduct safety training courses. Dillard-Smith Construction Company Safety Department or third-party safety resource companies may provide safety training programs, courses, and/or classroom instructions as required or requested. For your safety, the Right to Know law requires that before entering a workplace that contains or may contain hazardous chemicals, an employee or contractor must be aware of and trained in the following areas. What chemicals may be present in the workplace? How to read labels and material safety data sheets, MSDS. Where MSDS sheets are located or maintained. The methods necessary to avoid contact with hazardous substances. The use of correct personal protective equipment when handling hazardous substances. What first aid measures and emergency procedures must be available should an employee or contractor have accidental contact with a hazardous substance. The proper first aid procedures needed if there is contact with any hazardous materials. Each work location shall maintain, have on file, and follow the current hazard communication program. A supervisor will conduct a safety job briefing with the appropriate personnel before the start of each new job, each morning before work begins, and whenever there is a substantial change in work activities. The briefing shall cover at least the following subjects: who is in charge, what to do in the event of an emergency, the location and direction of the nearest emergency medical facility, a rally point should it become necessary to evacuate the work location, the hazards associated with the job, JSA, safe work procedures and equipment required to protect against any specific job hazards, special work procedures or safety practices to be followed for the job, energy source controls or shutoffs if applicable, personal protective equipment requirements and use. The person in charge must ensure that each member of the crew understands the work assignment and safety requirements involved in a job. The supervisor is responsible for accounting for all personnel upon the completion of each job. Pre-job and post-job briefings shall be reviewed and evaluated by company supervisors and safety personnel. Employees operating company motor vehicles must be properly licensed and authorized. Operators must obey all applicable traffic laws and ordinances. All employees and passengers must wear seat belts and shoulder harnesses where provided. Employees and contractors may ride only in the passenger compartment of vehicles. Operators or passengers exiting a vehicle must shut the door behind them. Vehicles must not be left unattended with any door open. Vehicles parked on slopes or grades must have emergency brakes set and wheels chocked. Operators should park and plan routes to avoid having to operate in reverse whenever practical. Only qualified employees and contractors with the necessary training and experience may work on or near energized lines and/or equipment. All non-qualified personnel on a job site shall maintain a distance of at least 10 feet from any part energized up to 50,000 volts, with 4 inches additional clearance for every 10,000 volts above 50,000 volts. Everyone must conduct their work on the assumption that if a conductor or energized part is not effectively grounded, it is not de-energized. Ground jumpers should only be installed with an approved insulated live line tool. Employees or contractors must wear the appropriately rated rubber-insulated gloves and sleeves within 5 feet of all energized circuits or parts. Only authorized, trained, and qualified climbers may climb wood or steel structures. Except in an emergency, only qualified employees and contractors may operate aerial devices. Authorized employees and contractors with the necessary training and qualifications are the only people allowed to enter or work in a confined space. A confined space is defined as any area large enough and so configured that an employee can bodily enter and perform assigned work, and has limited or restricted means for entry or exit, is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. Training is provided so that all personnel whose work is regulated by these requirements possess the understanding, knowledge, and skills necessary for the safe performance of their duties while working within a confined space. If you have not been trained for work in confined spaces, do not enter that area. If you are required to work in a confined space, make sure that all areas are tested for hazardous atmospheres before entering. When testing for atmospheric hazards, first test for oxygen, then for combustible gases and vapors, and then for toxic gases and vapors. Always use approved testing devices. Test or monitor the confined space as necessary to determine whether acceptable entry conditions are being maintained during the course of entry operations. A confined space that might contain a hazardous atmosphere should be tested for residues of all contaminants identified by evaluation testing using permit-specific equipment. This will determine that residual concentrations at the time of testing and entry are within the range of acceptable entry conditions. At least one attendant must be provided outside of a permit-required confined space into which entry is authorized as long as anyone is in the space. Employees and contractors performing confined space operations must be trained in emergency rescue procedures. Be sure the proper ventilating and rescue equipment is on the job site. Notification to utility owners, electric, water, sewer, cable, telephone, gas, via a one-call notification center or direct contact is required prior to opening an excavation. Whenever employees or contractors are working in a trench excavation, a trained, competent person shall be present, perform inspections, and document findings every day. A competent person is someone who is capable of recognizing existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings, and who has authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. Excavations greater than 4 feet in depth require the use of stairways, ladders, or ramps for personnel entering and exiting the excavation or trench. Spoil piles must be placed at least 2 feet from the edge of an excavation to reduce loading and the potential for material to fall into the excavation. Install and remove support systems in a manner that prevents cave-ins, structural collapses, or injury due to support system failure. Means of access and egress must be located so as to require no more than 25 feet of lateral travel. Only employees and contractors trained in lockout-tagout procedures may perform lockout-tagout operations. Affected personnel must be trained and become qualified on the provisions of site-specific LOTO programs. Do not remove locks or tags until you notify all impacted persons. Do not operate any equipment that has a hold or a danger do not operate tag on the lockout device. Only trained and qualified equipment operators or employees under the direct observation of a qualified operator are authorized to operate mechanical equipment. Inspect equipment before using it and at the end of each work shift. Cranes shall be set up level and stabilized, with outrigger pads placed under each outrigger foot. Equipment controls and safety guards shall be in place and operational. Equipment shall not be used and/or operated beyond its rated capacity. Report defective equipment immediately and remove it from service. One of the simplest and best methods of ensuring your physical safety is wearing the required and proper personal protective equipment, or PPE. PPE must be worn at all times and inspected before use every day. Check with your supervisor to determine what PPE is needed for a particular task. Any damaged or unsanitary PPE shall be removed from service and cleaned, repaired, or replaced. To be protected from head impact injury, an ANSI Z89.1 rated hard hat is required. Wearing ANSI Z87.1 safety glasses with side shields will help prevent eye impact injury. Clean, unscratched monogoggles provide protection from eye injuries caused by flying or airborne particles. A full face shield is required for any grinding or operations that produce the risk of impact injury from flying or hot debris. You are protected from hearing loss with the use of the appropriate earplugs or ear muffs. For nearly all jobs, leather palm work gloves are required to prevent lacerations. This is the most common type of injury on the job. When working with electrical equipment, the properly rated insulating rubber gloves and sleeves are necessary to prevent shock hazards. All employees and contractors are required to wear at least ankle-high all-leather footwear with steel or composite toes being recommended. Again, all personnel working higher than 6 feet off the ground are required to wear personal fall arrest equipment and/or positioning equipment. To guard against kickback injuries, employees or contractors operating chainsaws on the ground must wear ballistic chaps. It cannot be stressed too much that your safety and the safety concerns of everyone you work with are critical. No project or work activity is so important or urgent that it's worth ignoring or skipping the safe work practices necessary to doing your job. Every worker is responsible for reporting any unsafe acts or conditions to your supervisor immediately. Regional and local management will ensure that employees and contractors have the education, knowledge, skills, and equipment to perform their job safely. But it's your responsibility to know the safe way in which to do your work. Again, every employee and contractor must understand and have working knowledge of this safety orientation and the content of the Safety Code of Conduct booklet. All rules and safe work practices in this presentation must be followed. Each employee and contractor is required to know and use all personal protective equipment for his or her job. Negligence, carelessness, or unsafe work practices will not be tolerated. Violations of company rules or policies can result in immediate disciplinary actions up to and including discharge from the company or being released as a contractor. As in all aspects of your assignments, if there are any questions regarding safety or the requirements for your job, make sure you contact your supervisor.
Thank you for your attention and your efforts in these safety practices. It means everything to those you work with and to your families.